This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. Welcome back to the show today as we get kicking things off here on a Tuesday edition of the show. No Grant today. Grant is stuck in traffic, unfortunately, as he's trying to work his way through the crazy inner-city Milwaukee traffic to get to the studio. And Lord willing, he will be with us a little bit later on in the show. So you're just going to be stuck with me for the first part of the show, if not the entire show, depending on how he does getting through traffic. So for some of you, I'm sorry. For the rest of you, you're welcome. There's only so much that I can do, though, unfortunately, in terms of the traffic aspect of it. So welcome inside the studio. I'm glad to have you guys all back here with us today here on a Tuesday edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Remember, you can catch us, though, every Monday through Friday right here from 7 to 8 a.m. Central live on Spreaker.com. And you can catch us on SportsRadioAmerica.com, Live 365, and tune in from 11 to 1 p.m. Central. And you can also catch us on demand anytime you want to on iHeartRadio, on iTunes, and on Spreaker.com as well. A lot of people seem to enjoy listening to our show, going back and listening to it from what we've noticed, and people love it through iHeartRadio and on iTunes as well. So subscribe to our podcast there. Tell your friends about us. Tell your family about us, if you so choose. Post about it on social media. We love hearing from you guys and love interacting with you as well as we do different kinds of things. So on social media, you can find us on a few different platforms as well. You can find us on Facebook at the Bax and Grant Sports Show. On Twitter, we are at BG Sports Show. I am at Baxter Colburn. You can find Grant at Grant's Rant BGSS. And then on Instagram, we are at BG Sports Show as well. So, and then emailing, if you ever want to drop us a line, let us know your thoughts and comments about anything that we do on the show. You can drop us a line at bgsportshow@gmail.com. So a good show for you coming up today. David Kenyon will be joining the show a little bit later on in our second segment to be talking about the wonderful and ever-changing world that is fantasy football. I'm excited. I won my first fantasy football game. I'm not excited, or I'm not happy in the fact of one of the players that I had that didn't show up, but we'll get to that in the second segment. But started off week one with a victory, thankfully, so I'm excited about that. Pretty sure Grant won his game as well, so he beat David Kenyon. So I'm curious to know what his thoughts are about that when we get into that second segment. But right away here in the first segment last night was the two Monday Night Football games happening in the NFL. And I want to highlight both of those things. Atlanta beating Philadelphia last night 26-24. There are fewer things in life that surprise me, but for some reason this one didn't surprise me very much just because of how much hype was surrounding the Philadelphia Eagles. Because there was an article that Grant and I had mentioned, and even that I had mentioned, I believe it was last Thursday on the show, that Tim Tebow, when he was on the Philadelphia Eagles, was more of a media shield for Chip Kelly and the Eagles than he was an actual addition to the team in terms of a player that looked like he was going to help take the team, to improve them and really do good things for the organization. And then we see them last night against a Atlanta team that, for most people that follow the NFL relatively closely, know is not good. Atlanta has not played well in the last probably 2 seasons. Last year they were atrocious. They didn't even get out of the division last year. Carolina won the division with a 7-8-1 record last year. If the best team in your division is 7-8-1, what does that say about the rest of the teams? Well, we kind of saw that this week again, except this time Atlanta proved to the NFC just how good they were. Matt Ryan last night, he did throw 2 interceptions. That's the negative strike against Matt Ryan last night. However, though, he did throw 2 touchdowns, threw for 298 yards, completing 23 of his 34 passes. You look at the Eagles. This is where it all kind of went wrong. Sam Bradford, he threw the ball a lot. He threw 52 passes last night. He completed 36 of those for 336 yards, 1 touchdown, but he had 2 interceptions. He wasn't sacked all night. And even on the flip side, Matt Ryan, he was only sacked once last night for the Eagles, which is good to see that both teams were able to provide good protection for their quarterbacks, because both of these teams are going to flourish based off of how good their quarterbacks play. And if they're protected, they have the opportunity to thread the ball around a little bit and create bigger opportunities. Now, the rushing attack, the Legion of Zoom, for most of you that know, on Philadelphia's team, all 3 players saw carries last night. Darian Sproles led the rushers last night for the Eagles. 5 carries, 50 yards. He averaged 10 yards a carry. Not too bad, honestly, not too bad at all. DeMarco Murray, he had 8 carries for 9 yards. That was very disappointing. That's what stood out to me as one of the more disappointing performances last night for Philadelphia. Yes, DeMarco Murray got his first touchdown. That's great. Congratulations, DeMarco. Ryan Matthews even got a touchdown last night on his 3 carries of 4 yards. Things like that are not going to win you a Super Bowl. If you're Philadelphia and you go out in this offseason and you make this big signing in DeMarco Murray, only having him run the ball 8 times and him only getting 9 yards, there's a problem. Whether or not that's Murray, whether or not that's the offensive line, whether it's just a personnel scheme, whether it's getting familiar with everybody, there's a lot of different things that factor into that. And the fact that DeMarco Murray, who a lot of Philadelphia fans and NFL experts and people that just follow the league casually, even just fans of Murray, even when he was down in Dallas, they were expecting to see a lot more out of Murray in his first official game. And I think that you can definitely take some good things away from this game from Philly, but one of the negatives has to be that DeMarco Murray only got 9 yards on 8 carries. Yes, maybe they were using him in a different way last night. I don't know. I wasn't inside Chip Kelly's head. I don't know if I'd want to be inside Chip Kelly's head. That's a scary place, honestly. Thankfully, they've got 15 more games to go. First game, maybe it was a bit more of an experiment for Philadelphia last night. We did see the emergence of Jordan Matthews, though. Jordan Matthews, 10 catches, 102 yards last night. Philadelphia fans are excited about Jordan Matthews. They know what he brings to the table. We saw glimpses of it last season, and then we got to see it again last night. Like we said, 10 catches, 102 yards, average 10.2 yards a carry. Those stats are definitely going to help Philadelphia's passing attack move forward and help Sam Bradford as well, knowing that he's got a reliable receiver. Darren Sproles, as much as we say that he's a running back, he's one of the most dangerous running back catchers ball catchers, I guess, out of the backfield. Last night, he almost went for 100 yards. He had 7 catches for 76 yards. He was averaging almost 11 yards a carry, or 11 yards a catch last night. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy for a running back to do that well. It reminds me of an older Eagles running back, Brian Westbrook, for those of you that remember the NFL about 10 years ago, 5 to 10 years ago. Brian Westbrook was very much like a Darren Sproles. He was a good running back. He could make those plays carrying the ball, but he was deadly out of the backfield, absolutely deadly. And we got to see that last night with Darren Sproles, and I think that San Diego fans, back when you had Sproles on the team, or even New Orleans fans, are going, yeah, exactly. We know what he can bring to the table, and we have not been able. And now I think Philly is excited that they get that opportunity to experience what Darren Sproles can bring to the team. Now, looking on the other side, Atlanta, for their running game, Tevin Coleman, he had 20 carries for 80 yards last night. That's not too terrible, honestly, for an opening night performance. No touchdowns from him. Now, the receivers. On paper, Atlanta has 2 of the best wide receivers in the NFL, if not possibly the best 1-2 punch on paper. Julio Jones and Roddy White. For those of you that know, the Green Bay Packers is a team that's very near and dear to myself and Grant, and we think that when Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb are healthy, that they provide one of the better, if not the best, options at wide receiver in the NFL. But what Atlanta can bring to the table if they're healthy, if they receive the ball consistently, is probably the best 1-2 punch in the NFL. Julio Jones, Roddy White. We got to see this in full form last night, and it did not disappoint if you were an Atlanta fan. Julio Jones, 9 receptions, 141 yards, 2 touchdowns last night. 2 touchdowns that were definitely needed, and I think that it allowed Julio Jones to really make a comeback because both Julio Jones and Roddy White have been battling injuries the last 2 or 3 seasons, and now last night we got to see both of them really take it in and show what they're capable of doing. Julio Jones, he was targeted 11 times last night. He caught 9 of those passes. And then Roddy White, 4 catches for 84 yards. Even though he only had 4 receptions, he still got 84 yards out of it. He averaged 21 yards a catch. He was targeted 8 times throughout the game. So the fact that they have those 2 big wide receivers, in Atlanta especially, there's a massive drop-off at the wide receivers position. So if Julio Jones and Roddy White go down, there's just not much that is left, unfortunately. And for many of you that maybe play, daily fantasy sports or even were playing fantasy football as a whole this season, having guys like Julio Jones on your team last night, I'm sure gave you a massive boost. I mean, a over 100-yard, performance and 2 touchdowns. Well, that's going to get you some massive fantasy points, in any league, regardless if it's daily fantasy or if it's a season-long fantasy, last night. Now, I want to flip over. So Atlanta beating Philadelphia 26-24 last night, which was huge, and I think a bit of a surprise. Now, if there was a bigger surprise last night, was the fact that San Francisco beat Minnesota by a score of 20-3. Now, I was thinking about this morning as I was getting ready because yesterday as I was driving home from the studio, I was listening to the radio, and Mike were on, and they were talking about the Vegas odds, the ESPN odds, saying that, we believe that San Francisco is the team that is on paper and in Vegas the favorite to win the game. But Minnesota was both Mike and Mike's pick to win this game. And they were my pick, and they were Grant's pick, and they were a lot of other people's picks that we know and that work with the show. And I feel like all the hype around Minnesota just kind of messed with everybody. It messed with them. It messed with Adrian Peterson coming back. And maybe some of it was the overshadowing the fact that, Adrian Peterson's back, Minnesota is going to instantly be good again. The fact that Adrian Peterson struggled last night is a bad indicator for what Minnesota is going to potentially do this season. The fact that Teddy Bridgewater struggled even more last night is even more difficult. Now, there are a few different things that you can look at it. Teddy Bridgewater, he went 23 of 32 last night for 231 yards, and he didn't throw any touchdowns. He threw 1 interception. What gets me, though, is he was sacked 5 times. 5 times last night. And the thing that bothers me is that not the lack of production from Teddy Bridgewater. It is the issue with the offensive line, which Phil Lodeholt went down during preseason. He had a torn Achilles. There was that concern of whether or not this Minnesota the offensive line was going to be able to do what needed to happen for this team to be successful this season. You take away a guy like Phil Lodeholt on the offensive line, that's a massive cog. A massive cog that Adrian Peterson would have loved to have run behind, that Teddy Bridgewater would have loved to have had protecting him. You take him away, you insert a 4th-round draft pick, and that's where issues can arise. Now, I didn't get an opportunity to watch all the Vikings game last night. I was busy helping my wife with other things around the house last night. She's a teacher, so I was helping her out, getting her stuff prepared for her classes today. So if some of you are like, well, that's not the original case, well, I'm just going based off of the information that I received from the different media sources that I was viewing through the game last night. So what did stand out to me, though, and I want to give a special shout-out as well, is Carlos Hyde from the San Francisco 49ers. Carlos Hyde is from the exact same city that I'm from in Florida, Naples, down in Naples, Florida. He went to high school, and we went to high school at the exact same time. I got to see Carlos play multiple times down in Naples. Fantastic talent. And then obviously he went to Ohio State, had a terrific collegiate career. And then last night, he drops 168 yards on 26 carries and 2 touchdowns. It was the Carlos Hyde show last night. There was no doubt about that last night. And I think that San Francisco was nervous after they got rid of Frank Gore. They knew kind of what they had in Carlos Hyde, but they didn't know. And now they do. They have a guy that can drop 150-plus yards a game if he needs to, and he scored twice last night. That right there speaks volumes to me, and I feel that right there takes a load of pressure off of Colin Kaepernick, who, let's be honest, didn't play well last night. 17 of 26, 165 yards only, no touchdowns, no interceptions. He was sacked once, but what are you going to do in that regard? San Francisco's O-line, there's definitely been questions about that. There's so many different things that can be taken away from this game last night, and I think San Francisco winning at home, and there's a distinct advantage. San Francisco at home is a good team, no matter what. They could be 0-10 or 10-0. San Francisco at home, they find a way to always be good, especially in the national spotlight, going up against a hyped-up team like Minnesota. I think the fact that San Francisco was able to steal a win last night is going to do huge things for them. And you also have to take into account that San Francisco, they're technically ahead of Seattle right now in the playoffs and in the division. So not in the playoffs, in the division right now. So, San Francisco fans, hey, enjoy that. Enjoy the fact that you are better than Seattle this week, because who knows how long that's going to last. Well, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot will be joining us to talk fantasy football. You're not going to want to miss it. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. No Grant. Grant is off today, and we are continuing on without him. We will miss him, but we know that he shall return with us tomorrow, so we look forward to having Grant back in the studio with us tomorrow, as he will be offering his rant as he does every Wednesday and Friday and Monday as well. I don't know why I went Wednesday, Friday, Monday, but that was the order I decided to go with talking about the week. So I've only I'm like a fourth through my coffee this morning, so you gotta bear with me this morning, folks. I'm doing the best I can based off of a late night, and it was an exciting night though in the football world, and this whole opening weekend was fun. And if you play fantasy sports, especially fantasy football, you know that on Tuesdays is when we bring in David Kenyon, our encyclopedia of football knowledge, and self-proclaimed, what is it? Are you a Latin expert as well, David? I feel like your resume grows every other day with us on the show.
Yeah, I'd like to think I'm a Latin scholar, but that's just a joke.
Yeah, we had a time last week where we were trying to figure out the meaning or the definition of stats, and you texted in saying and giving us the whole definition and everything. So, it's things like that we appreciate your little contributions to the show, David.
Well, thank you, Baxter.
You're welcome. Well, fantasy football, David, it was quite the interesting week, not only in the NFL, but also in the Bax and Grant Sports Show Fantasy Football League. I'm thrilled because I was able to sneak out a victory last night. I was able to defeat one of our friends of the show, Matthew Evans, one of our soccer guys. I beat him by a score of 108-102. Not because of the players that I thought were going to show up, but by players that I was a little surprised by, and I talked about one of them in the last segment. Carlos Hyde, he had a he was the leading scorer on my team last night, 29 points, and I couldn't be happier, honestly. Did you see a performance like this coming from Carlos Hyde last night, David?
No, I didn't think a massive day like that was anywhere close to on the radar. 168 yards on the ground and 2 touchdowns. I mean, that's amazing.
I will take that any day.
That at all. Yeah, absolutely, especially against a Minnesota defense that's really not that bad.
Yeah,
And San Francisco's offensive line, we thought, was that bad.
Yeah, that's why I was like, and I even remember talking to you earlier in the week. I was like, I've got Carlos Hyde on my, on my roster. I've got Joseph Randall on my bench. Should I switch them out? Maybe I'll get a few more points. And at this point, I'm glad I didn't. I almost wish that I would have sat Adrian Peterson last night. He only got me 5 points, and I was completely blown away by that.
Yeah, you just run the risk of that. I mean, you're not going to take out your stud. You look at Matt's team, and he had Odell Beckham. If you watched the game, you saw that when the Giants were on offense, they looked completely inept, and the only routes that Beckham was able to run well against that defense were quick hitters, outs, hitches, curls, anything like that. His biggest play was a seam route on their last possession of the game. I mean, it's just one of those things where, well, it didn't work out for me today.
Yeah, no, I think it was definitely a classic case of that. And I was looking through some of my other guys, too. I mean, I had started Richard Rodgers of Green Bay over Heath Miller, and Heath Miller got me 8 points on the bench. Richard Rodgers only got me 3, but the only reason I did that is just because of the knowledge that I know that Aaron Rodgers has, that chemistry with his tight ends, especially Richard Rodgers. And I was looking for a little bit more production out of him, unfortunately. But I think another surprise aspect of my team was I was thrilled by how well the Broncos defense played against Baltimore. Even in their 19-13 victory, they got me 18 points this week.
I think that's something you're going to see a lot more this year. That Broncos defense is stellar. Actually, in one league I just saw, in a different league I'm in, somebody dropped the Broncos defense. So
really?
I was thinking, okay, well, I guess I'll just go pick them up.
I was going to say, please tell me you submitted a claim for them.
Oh, absolutely. That defense with Wade Phillips, the coordinator there, he loves to send 5. They're going to pressure the quarterback. They're going to get after you. They might force some turnovers, and then that pressure just breeds a little panic sometimes, and you look at that with Aqib Talib's touchdown.
Yep.
That was a very poor throw from Flacco on a slant route. Talib jumps it and takes it to the house. 8 points for you.
Boom. And I need to issue an official apology to you, David, because I drafted Tony Romo for my fantasy team, going off of advice that you had offered to me a few months ago, and I remember you telling me that Tony Romo was a guy that a lot of people should consider drafting, and I was like, you're crazy. Why would I ever do that? And then you're like, well, because of his fourth quarter comebacks. And sure enough, what does he do in week 1? He leads a tremendous fourth quarter comeback, not only putting up good numbers for my fantasy team, but proving that he actually is not too bad of a quarterback to have on your team, especially when it comes to fantasy. So for that, I am sorry for doubting you, and I appreciate you helping me win my game this week.
I'm here to serve.
Thank you. Well, let's talk about, we were talking about the Cowboys there with Tony Romo. You have a Cowboy on your team, and your fantasy team had a bit of an off week this week. What happened for you this week?
The nature of the beast. Fantasy football, you can put together the best team possible. I'll just pull up this other one really quick. Last week in a different league, I scored 193 points.
Wow.
And in this league, I scored 63. If you don't score touchdowns, you're not going to win games. I had 1 touchdown from my team, and so be it. That's the way it goes. Grant had Rob Gronkowski and Bishop Sankey. The Jets defense, which I think caused 4 turnovers, I believe, against the Browns, 4 or 5. If the defense shows up and you get touchdowns on your team, and that'll work. And then me, I just didn't get any touchdowns. And that's the way it goes. And
now I think that something for the people that are in our fantasy league, or even the people that were listening to the show earlier, you have 2 different guys on your bench that you could have started and had better results than Sam Bradford. You have Tom Brady and Phillip Rivers on your bench. For those that didn't hear the episode, can you walk us through you were a little back and forth with whether or not you wanted to start Tom Brady this week, but your reasoning made sense, at least when you explained it to me.
All right. So I have Tom Brady, Phillip Rivers, and Sam Bradford. Initially, I had drafted Rivers and Brady thinking that Brady would be out, but happy to put him on my bench. And then I was looking at the weather reports on Thursday, and it was supposed to thunderstorm throughout the entire game. So I thought, well, Brady won't throw as much. And then Pittsburgh decided to literally not cover Rob Gronkowski. So those are free yards.
Yeah.
Very, very nicely done from the Patriots. I mean, you can't complain about something where it was a freak thing. I mean, Brady, he would have put up good numbers, but he put up even better numbers because Pittsburgh seriously just did not cover Gronkowski.
I don't understand how you don't cover the biggest guy on the field. Like, I feel like he just stands out like a sore thumb, like, hey, we should probably cover that guy.
I mean, he's 6'7". He's pretty hard to miss.
No kidding. I mean, I know when I saw some of the footage of that where there was literally like 10 to 15 yards of nobody in front of Gronkowski, I'm like, okay, well, I guess if that's how Pittsburgh thinks they're going to cover him, sure. But if not, that's going to be great for fantasy owners. And I have a feeling Rob Gronkowski made a lot of fantasy owners very happy this week with his 3-touchdown performance.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Now, I'm looking at your team. You have 3 players on your team that are out with injuries. Now, how do you attack that going forward? Because they're not just some throwaway players, and they're more than likely all coming back in the next few weeks. Those guys are Dez Bryant, Mike Evans, and Arian Foster. How do you work that system out? Or is somebody going to get dropped from your team that is a lower provider? Or what is your strategy moving forward?
With the depth on my team, ideally I would trade someone and get a piece that I can plug in for a couple weeks, whether that means packaging a player on your bench, or if this happens for a couple weeks, then you start to consider, do I trade? Like I have Le'Veon Bell too. So Right now I have Le'Veon Bell who's suspended, Foster who's out, but I planned for that.
Yes.
Evans who's out, I didn't plan for that. Dez Bryant who's out, and I didn't plan for that. And then if it comes down to it, fine. Then I'm just going to have to trade Tom Brady. I'm going to have to trade Alshon Jeffrey.
So you've got but the thing with Alshon Jeffrey too is that he's so day to day with his calf though too that there's a possibility that he could be out as well if he does something wrong during a practice or a game.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said earlier, it's just the nature of playing the game. I thought I had a killer team, and I still think I do. But if injuries happen, well, injuries happen.
Yeah, and that's the nature of it.
I'll just plug a little thing right here of, hey, people, it's a game, and if your player doesn't score 50 points this week, that doesn't mean you should be hoping that somebody else on the other team tears an ACL.
Yeah.
Because that's stupid. I'm just rolling through Twitter, and people are saying, I wouldn't care if Julio Jones tore his ACL right now so I could win my fantasy game.
That's just stupid.
Think about what you just said.
Honestly, you're wishing bodily harm upon someone that, this is their job. That's like me saying, David, I hope you break your hand so you can't write articles this week for Bleacher Report. Like, come on. Like, that's just mean. Like, it's part of your job. As much as people forget that these are, NFL players that are actually, having a job, that's part of their job. It's, nobody wishes bodily harm upon somebody just so they can win a made-up fantasy game. That's why it's called fantasy, because it's not real life.
Yeah, I mean, I love fantasy football. I have 8 teams, so I'll be the first one to tell you guys,
wow. Yeah. Holy cow. Okay. I mean, and I thought, I think I have 2, and I got a bit of ways to go. You've got me curious now. Since you play fantasy, you have 8 different teams. Are they all season long, or are they all daily fantasy? How do you play? What are the ways you play?
I do play both. I have 8 season-long teams. Most of them are at ESPN. A couple of them are dynasties. And then I also play some daily fantasy as well.
Okay. Now, I know that there's always that constant debate between, daily fantasy is better or not than season-long fantasy. What are some of the positives that you've seen just from being able to play daily fantasy?
The biggest positive is the one that they advertise. Looking at a team, if say you had Dez Bryant and hold on one second. Let's say you had like Des Bryant and Deshaun Jackson and T.Y. Hilton, and you thought, man, my receiving core is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? Next week you might not have any of them play.
Ooh.
So then you can go to DraftKings or FanDuel. I'm pretty sure they both have free contests.
Yep.
If you want to play that, there are limited prizes in that, but you can play for free if you want to and draft a little team, see how it goes. Otherwise, I just play all the little cheap games, and then hopefully it turns out.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think some people feel like, to play daily fantasy, I have to have, I've got to be willing to drop, $20 to $100 to play in these big contests. Well, not necessarily. You can work your way up. There's, even I've seen on DraftKings, they've got quarter arcades. You can drop, 25 cents, and you could still win a little bit of money. And it all kind of depends on how, some people, this is their job. Daily fantasy is what they do, and they can make loads of money off of it once they get good at it. And other people, they're just like, hey, I'm going to play for a little bit. I'm going to, deposit $5, $10, and if I win it back, great. If not, well, I only lost a few dollars, so it's not a big deal. But it's something that continues to grow. I feel like, and why not? It's exciting, and being able to press the reset button on your team too, I feel like makes a lot of people happy, depending on how they do. So moving forward,
for sure.
So moving forward, what injuries and what players now do people that are playing fantasy, the week is over, all the waiver claims I'm sure are just flooding into different leagues. Who are the players that, if they are available, people should target or might want to drop, or might be curious to know about injuries, if they're worth holding on to? What advice do you have for us moving forward now?
Well, first off, with Des Bryant, people are quick to anoint Terrence Williams as the guy because he is the other outside receiver for the Cowboys, but I'm not so quick with that. I like Cole Beasley a lot, especially in points per reception leagues. Beasley is going to get plenty of targets, but most of all, I like Tony Romo's security blanket, Jason Witten.
Yes.
I think Witten is going to have a killer next 7-8 weeks while Des Bryant is out, which, by the way, don't bank on 4 weeks, fantasy owners of Des Bryant, because from what I have read from people more educated than me is what Des Bryant's injury is. No one has ever come back in the 4 weeks that they like to think. So it will be 6 to 8 weeks conservatively is what I read.
That's what I was telling Grant yesterday too, because when I heard that Des was getting foot surgery, and I heard that he fractured a bone, and my foot surgery was a little different, but I was like, I was out 3 months, and I was a fairly active guy before I got hurt, and I'm sure, and I know that the NFL has way more, advanced medical procedures than I received, obviously, when I got my foot surgery. But even still, I'm like, foot surgery is not something that you can just, I'll be out for a month and I'll be back. It's like, no, it's something usually way more than that. And like you said, that timetable, I'm sure will be a little bit longer, and fantasy owners need to be keeping a careful eye on just how long they hold on to Dez, and if they do hold on to him, what the timetable continues to be.
Yep. And, it's just a disappointing thing when your first-round pick is going to be out for 2 months, but oh well.
Yeah, something like that happens.
You look on another team, high-powered offense, T.Y. Hilton. There was a scare with him that he might be out for an extended period of time. It seems with his bone bruise, he will be back next week, if not the week after. In the meantime, Dante Moncrief, I have him stashed in a couple dynasty leagues. I love that guy. I think he had 6 catches last week for 64 yards. He looks like the true number 2 in Indianapolis, and if T.Y. Hilton can't go, Moncrief steps into that role.
Yep.
And then another receiver that you might have taken a mid-round pick on, Deshaun Jackson. Probably weren't expecting too much, but it's still disappointing when he's out for 4 weeks. In the meantime, Pierre Garçon is the only receiver option worth targeting, which is really disappointing because Pierre Garçon is no longer that good. However, that does give a big bump to Jordan Reed, the tight end, especially with Niles Paul already out for the season. Kirk Cousins loves him some Jordan Reed, and they showed it last week too, hooking up for a touchdown.
Exactly, and I think that's going to be something that, moving forward, people are going to want to keep an eye on. Now, before we let you go, David, one other thing for you. As people move forward with their fantasy leagues, like you said, it's fantasy. People need to realize that no matter what, this is a made-up game. There's also the fun aspect of it too. Do you have any bets going on with your leagues, like funny bets? Not money bets, because that's between you and your friends or whatever, but any funny bets in terms of, if you get last in this fantasy league, you have to, not shave for whatever, or, do this or do that? Or have you ever been a part of any league that has done anything like that?
I have not, but I've always considered it.
Okay.
One of my friends had floated the idea of a tattoo league,
Ooh.
But then when we saw who all was in the league, and we were like, okay, well, they're not going to agree to it.
Yeah, one of those where you're just like, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I've considered it. I think it'd be fun to do one of those things where, like, the winner gets to pick where we draft the next year.
Oh, okay.
Or loser has to do something that the rest of the league decides. I think those would be funny.
Yeah.
But it just adds to the fun of the game.
Exactly, and that's all it is at the end of the time. It is a game, and people need to realize that. As much time and sometimes as people put into it. Not to take away from those that are successful at it, but it's a game. It's just a game. People need to just relax a little bit. So, well, David, thank you so much for your time this week. We appreciate you stopping by, and we look forward to chatting with you again on Thursday.
You got it.
All right, we're going to go to another break. When we come back, does the NFL have a quarterback problem? Maybe it does. The Wall Street Journal sure seems to think so. We'll be right back. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. No Grant today. Grant has the day off today, as he was originally stuck in traffic, then realized that he would not be able to make it through in time to make it to the studio, because he also has Tuesday classes as well, Tuesday morning classes, and Thursday as well at 8 a.m. So he normally has to duck out of the studio a little early anyway, so it worked out well for him that he got to, just by the time he finally gets here with traffic and everything, that he will be able to just go straight to class and not have to worry about ducking out early for the show. So special thanks to David Kenyon from Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot, who joined us in our last segment talking about fantasy football. the pros and cons and the all different kinds of exciting information going forward. It's only week 1, fantasy football. Everyone needs to just take a deep breath. You survived week 1. Maybe you won, maybe you lost. But at the same time, as we reiterated, that's fun to say, multiple times in our last segment, it's just a game. It's just a game, everybody. Everybody needs to just calm down. David was citing people that are on Twitter wishing bodily harm against players in their fantasy league in terms of like NFL players. Like David referenced somebody on Twitter that said that they wish Julio Jones would tear his ACL so that way he would win his fantasy game. I mean, come on, guys. Really? Be a little bit more considerate about that. It is just a game, and I get it. Yes, maybe you're in a fantasy league or you're playing DraftKings or you're on Draft Theory or FanDuel or all the hundreds of other sites that are out there, and you want to win the money. I get it. And if that one player doesn't do well, then you're going to win. Sure. But to actually wish harm upon somebody, that's just a little much, personally. So just be thinking about that, as you move forward with your life, with fantasy football. Don't get too crazy, okay? Everyone just relax. Now, I want to bring up an article here on the Bax and Grant Sports Show that was written by Kevin Clark of the Wall Street Journal, and it's interesting because the headline of the article is very catching. It says, "Why the NFL has a quarterback crisis." And the little tagline that goes with it, it says, "Coaches see more quarterback prospects entering the league without the skill sets to excel. Will the classic NFL passer go extinct?" Now, the thought behind this immediately is that when you look at the NFL, there are lots of quarterbacks. Every team has obviously, one, plus probably one backup, sometimes two, depending on the team. The drop-off, though, in talent is amazing. Look at some of the top quarterbacks. You have Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning. You can make an argument for. He's on that wrong. He's getting that downside, but you can make an argument for him potentially. Andrew Luck is around. Drew Brees, Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, Ryan Tannehill, Tony Romo, Eli Manning. The list can go on and on and on. The drop-off, though, from elite to great to good to, oh my gosh, we might as well throw the water boy out there, continues to grow with each week. The NFL is a difficult place. We saw last week, Jameis Winston throw an interception on his first pass in the NFL as a rookie. And then we saw Marcus Mariota throw 4 touchdowns. Now, it's a tale of two different stories, two different people, two different offenses, two different defenses, and they were playing two pretty horrible respective defenses, regardless of who the quarterback was that was playing. But teams are desperate for good quarterbacks. Green Bay, they were able to have Brett Favre, and then they brought in Aaron Rodgers, who was groomed by Brett Favre, and now you can see the product of how Aaron Rodgers is. Tom Brady, he worked behind Drew Bledsoe for a while. He came in, took over the job after Drew Bledsoe got hurt. Tom Brady hasn't looked back since. Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning's been a starter his entire career in the NFL. He's never once been a backup quarterback, and he's transitioned just fine because he's had the right coaching. Drew Brees, same story for him. Tony Romo, some of those other guys that you hear out there, Eli Manning. Eli Manning's always been a starter, no matter which way you cut the cookie there on that one. Russell Wilson over in Seattle. He's kind of just made something out of nothing. I mean, yes, the defense does help him a lot. Andrew Luck, he's been a starter because he had to be. He replaced Peyton Manning, and then it was just, all right, Andrew, here are the keys to the Colts, gaudy 1963, Volkswagen Bug. Go do things with it. And then he was able to eventually turn it into a relatively modest Mustang now that the Colts are able to get to the playoffs every year at least. Now, one thing that I feel is a continuation of all of this is the fact that the college game plays an entirely different system than what the NFL does. When you look at the NFL, it's very much a traditional passer. You don't have the option. You have the read option a little bit, but it's really starting to go away unless you've got a guy like Colin Kaepernick. You've got a guy that's got some speed that can throw the ball down the field if you need to. But even that, we've seen Colin Kaepernick and the way that he plays quarterback really drop down in the last 2 years. Even Russell Wilson is becoming more of a pocket passer because that is how the NFL plays. Guys in college, they are so used to playing that quick up-tempo spread offense in shotgun formation, no huddle. They go zip through the plays. Most of the time, they don't even bother reading the defenses because they already know they need to focus more on the tempo of the game. They need to know what is coming up, and they need to know, okay, what's the next play, what's going on. Oh, if we keep going fast, we'll be just fine. We're starting to see Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football down in Cleveland, who made his living in college, whether or not he was paid or not, and signed autographs, etc. And now in the NFL, he got drafted in the first round because of what he did at the college level, because of how up-tempo Texas A&M's offense was. Now that he's here in the NFL, he's had to calm down, he's had to relax, see the tempo, let the game come to him instead of just trying to shoot through the game like he did with Texas A&M. And now he hasn't been as successful. There are obviously exceptions to the rule, but one person that obviously has struggled, you could say, is is Bryce Petty. Bryce Petty, yes, I know he's a backup at New York at the Jets, but he was a fast-paced, up-tempo, very hyped guy coming out of college, and then he made that jump from Baylor to where he is now in the NFL. And what really happens, and it's in this article with the Wall Street Journal, it's interesting because Petty admitted to grappling with the tasks such as hearing and calling the play. You have to identify the defensive backs in coverage, figure out where the Mike linebacker is. He said, and this is a direct quote from Petty, he said, "It's crazy as it sounds, but at Baylor, we did not point out the Mike linebacker or the middle linebacker," which is shocking because if any NFL quarterback, if you were to go to Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers and say, okay, walk me through everything you do before you snap the ball. When you're in shotgun, when you're under center, walk me through everything you do. 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, oh, you identify the linebacker, identify the coverage, identify the rush, this, that, and this, and then you snap the ball. Quarterbacks have like a mental checklist of like 10 or 15 things that they have to go through before they even think about snapping the ball. And that's why the college transition for so many quarterbacks has been so difficult. And it's interesting to see how people are so quick to jump on players like Bryce Petty, like Jameis Winston, Mariota, and saying, oh, they're not going to be good. They're not going to be good professional quarterbacks. They're not going to be good professional quarterbacks. Well, yes, because look at where these guys are being drafted from. Coaches should know that that is what they're getting. If you are Cleveland and you see, oh, Johnny Manziel, we think he could be a great starting quarterback for us. Cleveland doesn't play an up-tempo Texas A&M offense. They just don't. Maybe they will if they figure out that Manziel is going to be their starting quarterback going forward now that Josh McCown is out with a concussion. But even then, that's not how the NFL plays. You can play a quick-style offense like Chip Kelly's trying to do in Philadelphia, but we even saw it last night. That backfired on them. They didn't end up winning the game last night. Sam Bradford, he didn't have a good game at all last night. Yes, the running backs are heavily involved as well with the quick option and the pass and the dumping off of the backfield, but it's still not something that is working. Look at the traditional pocket passers. Drew Brees, Ben Roethlisberger. Those guys don't have breakaway speed. If they get pressured, they're going to stand in the pocket, they're going to make their throw at the last second, and then they might take a few big hits. That's part of it. Jay Cutler and Aaron Rodgers, we saw this last week in the Packers-Bears game, they still have enough speed that if they're pressured, they can get up and run out of the pocket. No big deal. Grab a few yards. But they're not the players that are going to be, oh, the pocket's collapsing. Well, better tuck and run, juke this defender, juke that defender. Oh, there's a 35, 50-yard run all of a sudden out of nowhere. It's not the type of guys they are. Yes, they've got speed, but the game from college to the NFL is so different. It's so centralized on knowing the defense, being able to read the defense, and like we've noticed here in this article and just in the NFL as a whole, it's such a different game. And guys need to realize that when you pick a quarterback that is from that spread offense, that is that traditionalist that knows, okay, I'm going to, just keep trying to run the ball here, spread it around and have some fun, that's not going to win you games always. That's not how the NFL plays, and as we've seen so far, no team has been able to consistently do that in the NFL for long periods of time. It just hasn't happened. So, does the NFL have a quarterback problem? Yes, I think it does, because of the players that are coming up from college that these teams are putting so much faith in. If you can look at a guy that's way more traditional and you surround him with good players that play the same system that he does, and you're not trying to completely take him out of what he played in college and put him into the NFL and say, all right, you really had a high-tempo, upbeat offense. Well, now we're going to be very conservative, very, quick and direct with our passes, but we're not going to, there's not going to be 5 seconds between each play. We're going to go to a huddle. We're going to use all of that. and we're going to use the time accordingly. Some guys are going to struggle. Some guys are going to lose their jobs. Head coaches are going to get fired. GMs are going to get fired because of that. So it's all about an organizational thing. You've got to keep a better eye on who the quarterbacks are that you're drafting, and just who the players are that you're drafting. Quarterbacks especially, the system they play in college. If you want them to play in the NFL, you need to take a hard look at how willing they are to be able to switch systems, but it's how well they are just to do general things like identifying coverage. That's a big deal. If you can't identify the defense, throw 40 interceptions a season, you're going to be on the bench being called a bust. So the NFL, it's an ever-changing world. We're going to go to another break. We'll be right back. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. No Grant. Grant is off today as he was lost in the tribulations and trials that is Milwaukee traffic this morning, and by the time he was able to make it down to where our studio is located on our college campus, he had to go to class, unfortunately. So Tuesdays and Thursdays, Grant skips out a little early so he can go to class and further his education and become a learned scholar in all things. I believe he's going for music education. I don't remember for sure, but either way, he needs to go to class, so stay in school, kids, and I made sure that Grant went to class and got there on time. So we miss him on the show today, but things like that happen sometimes, just being able to adapt and move forward with it accordingly. So thanks to all of you that have continued to watch the show on Periscope. Hello to all of you. Remember, you can catch us right here on Periscope and on SportsRadioAmerica.com and on Spreaker.com. Monday through Friday. On Spreaker, you can listen to us live from 7 to 8 a.m. Central. Sports Radio America and Live 365, and tune in. You can catch us Monday through Friday as well from 11 to 1 p.m. Central Time. And then you can also tweet at us if you have any thoughts or comments at BG Sports Show. I am talking about the football aspect of things. We're going to pull out for a second and talk about the world of basketball, because the world of basketball lost a legend on Sunday, unfortunately, and he deserves our respect to be talked about. The man, the myth, the legend, Moses Malone, unfortunately passed away on Sunday at the age of 60. And he was one of the all-time greats to ever play the game, and he was actually the first ever, back in 1974, to be the first player to skip or to bypass college and go directly into the pros. Moses Malone, he was back when the ABA was still a thing. He played for the ABA's Utah Stars franchise for a while, and then he ended up being a 3-time league MVP for them as well. Moses Malone was inducted into the Hall of Fame, the NBA Hall of Fame, back in 2001. Now, Moses Malone, for some of you may or may not have known, had the nickname Chairman of the Board, which rightfully so. He ranks first all-time for offensive rebounds with 7,382, and he ranked third all-time for total rebounds in 17,834. All of that aspect definitely earns him the respect of being called chairman of the board. I mean, when you grab the ball off the backboard, it's, calling or grabbing a board. So, chairman of the board, for those of you that didn't get it, now made the connection, boom, you're welcome. Going along with Malone, though, he also ranks in the top 10 in the league history as a whole in the NBA for career points, free throws, games, minutes, and minutes per game as well. Moses Malone was a dynamic player that always made watching basketball fun, no matter where he played. He was part of the 82-83 dynamic front court for the Philadelphia 76ers as well. You got to play with the guys like Julius Erving, Maurice Cheeks, Bobby Jones, Andrew Toney, and Mark Ivanarani. Ivanarani? I don't know how to pronounce that last one. I think he's Italian, but I'm spacing on that one, so sorry about that one, man. But as of right now, though, there's been no official release to how he died, but he passed away at the age of 60. Hall of Famer Moses Malone We thank you for the impact that you made on the basketball community, and you will be sorely missed. And we'll see if anybody ever decides to break any of the chairman of the board's records as well. He is a legend on so many different facets, and we are forever grateful in the sports world for the contributions that he made. We're going to go to one more break. When we come back, we're going to be taking a look at the NFL season predictions for awards of the year. You're not going to want to miss it. This is the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Welcome back to the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. I'm Bax. No Grant. Grant is off for the day, but he'll be back tomorrow, so don't forget to check us out tomorrow like you can every Monday through Friday right here on Sports Radio America from 11 to 1 p.m. Central Time and 7 to 8 a.m. Central on Spreaker.com as well. Well, before we take off today, we want to first of all thank David Kenyon for his time coming on the show. We always love having David Kenyon on the show to talk about fantasy football in every facet. It's such an interesting take a look at an article that was written over at fansided.com. The Fansided NFL executive staff went through and offered their predictions for the NFL awards, the season awards that will be handed out this year. They added a few others as they're on their own as well, but the first one that they have coming up for this season is the my computer's having a problem. The Breakout Player of the Year. And the overall consensus, the players that received votes were Teddy Bridgewater, Jadeveon Clowney, I see Devontae Adams, Sam Bradford, and Jarvis Landry as well. Now, I definitely can see guys like Sam Bradford, Jarvis Landry, Devontae Adams. No, not at all. I think he'll have a great year for Green Bay, but he won't be a breakout star worthy of an award like that. The next category is Most Disappointing Team. Now, this is interesting. Pittsburgh Steelers, Cincinnati Bengals, Dallas Cowboys, Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, that raises a lot of questions about Pittsburgh. Yes, I know they have Le'Veon Bell, they have Ben Roethlisberger, they have Antonio Brown, but that's interesting because the division that the Pittsburgh Steelers are in, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh, that's a very rough and tough black and blue division. We saw 3 out of the 4 teams last season in that division make the playoffs. I don't see Pittsburgh being a team that is disappointing this year. It can be maybe disappointing in terms of how many games they don't win, but they're still going to make the playoffs. I think they're still going to be a contender this year, especially when Le'Veon Bell comes back in another game. Just something to think about. Moving forward, for the Rookie of the Year, Fansided.com, they have votes for Amari Cooper, Jameis Winston, oh please, Tyler Lockett, and Jameis Winston. Okay, the fact that Jameis Winston did as awful as he did in the first game of the season against that terrible defense kind of speaks volumes to how I feel like the rest of the season is going to go. Tyler Lockett, that's an interesting prospect. Seattle loves Tyler Lockett, but Amari Cooper is actually my vote as well, and Grant's vote, I know for a fact, for Rookie of the Year. So wouldn't be shocked. Amir Abdullah down in Detroit, or over in Detroit, is also another big possibility for Rookie of the Year. Looking at the next award that they have, that would be the Offensive Player of the Year. We have votes here for Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Adrian Peterson, and Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck. Even with Jordy Nelson being gone, Aaron Rodgers still has the possibility to be definitely the MVP again this season, and just also produce another great season statistically for the Packers and for himself. Adrian Peterson, well, we saw him how he played last night. He didn't even get over 40 rushing yards last night. Whether or not that was a true reflection of how good or not he's going to be, we'll see. Now, Tom Brady, the vote for Tom Brady, that makes a lot of sense, though, because Tom Brady is hungry, he's upset, and he's ready to start causing some problems. Now, the Defensive Player of the Year, votes for Justin Houston, J.J. Watt, Von Miller, J.J. Watt, and Von Miller. Denver has a great pass rush this year, and it's going to be anchored because of Von Miller and also DeMarcus Ware. Von Miller is definitely going to be probably a front winner. J.J. Watt, he only can do so much down in Houston. Until he gets more help, there's only so much that he can do, and I think that, you know what, at the end of the day, it's going to end up probably being a guy like a Von Miller for a more successful team like Denver. Now, looking on, they have NFL MVP. They have Aaron Rodgers, Andrew Luck, Andrew Luck, Andrew Luck, Andrew Luck, and Andrew Luck. Now, Andrew Luck, let's be honest, he played horrible in the first game of the season for the Colts. There's no way around it. The Colts lost their opening game to the Buffalo Bills. Yes, the game was semi-close, but Andrew Luck did not play well as a whole. To think that he will actually win the MVP this year, I think that's a bit far-fetched, honestly. Aaron Rodgers or somebody else that has a better opportunity, like Tom Brady maybe. That'd be great to see Tom Brady grab another MVP award in his career also. Looking at who Fansided.com has here for their end-of-the-season awards, they are now moving on to the AFC champion. They have Indianapolis Colts, Indianapolis Colts, Indianapolis Colts, New England Patriots, New England Patriots, Indianapolis Colts, and one guy went for the Baltimore Ravens. First of all, Baltimore, no thanks, but no thanks. The defense isn't good enough. Offensively, not happening. Indianapolis, well, you guys need to prove that you cannot lose to a team like Buffalo, for gosh sakes, and actually provide solid offensive play. For right now, that makes perfect sense that they won't win. Does Indianapolis have a good shot? Yeah, I think so. Does New England have a good shot? I think so. Does Denver have a good shot? Yeah, I think so. It's going to be the same three teams again this year that are going to be challenging. There's no real surprise team in the AFC. Maybe Miami, but we'll see. They have to get their act together a little bit more on offense. NFC champion according to Fansided.com. There are votes for Green Bay, Dallas, Green Bay, Green Bay, Green Bay. Barring any massive weird collapse, Green Bay's got a very good opportunity to do that. Now the Super Bowl champion, this is where things get interesting. Green Bay Packers, Indianapolis Colts, Dallas Cowboys, Green Bay Packers, Indianapolis Colts, Green Bay Packers. The amount of depth that Green Bay possesses is unrivaled by most teams, especially when it comes to core positions. Green Bay, even though they lost Jordy Nelson, they still have a great opportunity to win the rest of the season, win the Super Bowl. Why not? Bring another Lombardi Trophy back to Green Bay. It's about time, baby. It's been a few years. It's been 5 years. Notice that Seattle was nowhere on any of those lists. Keep that in mind. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. We'll be back with you again tomorrow for a Wednesday edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show, presented by Sports Radio America. Remember, you can listen to us Monday through Friday from 7 to 8 a.m. Central, live on Spreaker.com and on Periscope as well. Thanks to all of you that watch us on Periscope and your comments and your banter. Always appreciated and always a good time. You can also catch us on Sports Radio America from 11 to 1 p.m. Central on Live 365 and TuneIn. You can listen to us on demand anytime on iHeartRadio, on iTunes, and on Spreaker.com as well. Social media, you can catch us on a few different platforms. Facebook, go and like our Facebook page, The Bax and Grant Sports Show. Twitter, we are at BG Sports Show. I'm at Baxter Kilburn. Grant is at Grant's Rant BGSS. And then on Instagram, where we do some videos, where we do pictures, we do all kinds of crazy stuff, we are at BG Sports Show as well on there. Remember, you can also drop us a line anytime you want to by shooting us an email at bgsportshow@gmail.com. Special thanks to David Kenyon of Bleacher Report and the Sports Knot for joining us, as he does every Tuesday and Thursday here on the Bax and Grant Sports Show. We're going to have another exciting show tomorrow. Our power rankings come out. The first Week 1 NFL power rankings will be out. You're not going to want to miss it. Did your team rise? Did they fall? Are they just completely wiped out? There are going to be a lot of shifts and changes in this week's power rankings. You're not going to want to miss it. Thanks again for tuning in to another edition of the Bax and Grant Sports Show. Remember, if it happens in the sports world, Grant is probably going to rant about it, and if he doesn't, we're still going to talk about it anyway. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day, everyone. See ya!